I welcome this chance to further strengthen the unbreakable ties between the United States and Israel, and to assure you of our commitment to Israel's security and well-being. We know Israelis live in constant peril, but Israel will have our help.
It's a special relationship. We keep hearing that from one American president after another. But why? Why do we treat Israel as a special case? The answer has a great deal to do with these people, American Jews. There are some 6 million Jews in the United States, many of them committed both spiritually and politically to the 3.5 million Jews who call themselves Israelis. That is a powerful connection.
It used to be said that, I think within something like 30 minutes after the signal went out, prominent Jews across the country could be mobilized and put pressure on elected officials if it was necessary. Is that still true today?
I've never known anyone to time it. We do know whom to call.
It's part of a myth, perhaps, that we want to continue, that we are so strong.
Why is the Jewish lobby a flash word, a flash point?
Well, somehow, Jews, and to some degree they're right, feel that that word is used to, somehow they put an anti-Semitic connotation to it. And some people use it that way because it gets back to the old dichotomy of dual loyalty.
The whole world is against this tiny little state of Israel. We are the backbone.
Don't you think we ought to work together?
Sure.
So?
But you have to support Israel, however and whatever.
And some say we do. The United States government gives more military and economic aid to Israel than to any other country on the face of the earth. Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East. But the alliance now is under fire. Israel has invaded Lebanon and so far refused to withdraw. Last summer, the special relationship began to sour. The Israelis used these American F-16s to bomb Iraq's nuclear reactor. Then in October, we agreed to sell AWACS, advanced warning aircraft, to Saudi Arabia. The lobby tried to stop it. They failed. Suddenly, the American-Israeli connection was filled with bitterness. The president suggested Israel stay out of our business.
American security interests must remain our internal responsibility. It is not the business of other nations to make American foreign policy.
There was anti-Semitic undertones in the propaganda against Israel. I remember such expressions. Either Reagan or Begin. What does it mean?
Prime Minister Begin is expected back in Washington next week, 16 days after Israel's invasion of Lebanon. The invasion has once again put the American-Israeli connection under considerable pressure and revived some fundamental questions. What can we expect from Israel? What can Israel expect from us? Our ties to the Israelis are critical. We have made a moral commitment to a country which shares our democratic ideals and our cultural values. But we have also risked much for this relationship: the availability and price of our oil, friendship with the Arab world, and even the risk of global conflict. I'm Andrew Lack. Tonight, in Israel and in Washington, we'll take a look at this celebrated alliance and why it is in peril.
This portion of CBS Reports is sponsored by Lysol Disinfectant Spray to kill household germs on surfaces and eliminate odors.
Come on. Come on. You can do it. Come to Daddy. Good girl.
Come on, Pumpkin. Bath time.
While the baby's still a baby, you really need Lysol Spray. Lysol Disinfectant Spray eliminates odors in the air, keeps the whole room smelling fresh and clean. And nothing kills household germs on surfaces better.
Guess who made your room so nice and fresh?
Dada.
While the baby's still a baby, you really need Lysol Spray.
Make it sparkle, make it shine. Perk it up, make it glitter, make it glow.
Oh!
Perk it up, perk up your no-wax floor with Perk.
Perk was made to clean and shine no-wax floors with a special no-wax formula that just won't build up, no matter how often you use it.
So make it sparkle, make it shine. Perk it up, make it glitter, make it glow. Perk up your no-wax floor with Perk.
Welcome to Washington, my fellow citizens, concerned and committed as you are. The messages you carried to Capitol Hill today and tomorrow are very much in the public interest.
AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. In Washington, that means the Jewish lobby. Tom Dine is AIPAC's executive director.
The stakes are very high. We need you. With your help, we can win. You are here to lobby.
You're welcome here. Very, very good. Nice to see you. Hope you have a good time.
And lobby they do. In fact, they do it better, more effectively than any other single ethnic group in America.
Very glad you're here.
Hardly a senator or a congressman would argue with that. An AIPAC reception in the Capitol last month turned out nearly half the United States Senate and earned this endorsement from House Majority Leader Jim Wright.
It's wonderful to have you here again. We thank you most of all in behalf of all of our colleagues of both political parties, the House and the Senate, for what you are, for what you do, for what you stand for.
It is all smiles now, but 8 months ago, during the battle over AWACS, this was the crowd that many denounced as too powerful, too aggressive, too influential.
Citizen lobbying is more than a First Amendment right. It is an imperative for continued Jewish survival.
At the AIPAC annual policy conference last month, 800 Jewish leaders from around the country regrouped and got their marching orders.
Stroke your congressman or senator. Let them know you appreciate their time and their past support. Even those with mediocre records or poor records generally consider themselves friends and supporters of Israel. Don't be bashful, but do be polite.
You know what? You sent me the nicest letter, and all I did was send you 25 bucks. That's fine.
Remember, you're talking to someone who is not afraid to come to you for a vote and for your support every 2 to 6 years.
It was a nice event the other evening. It was wonderful. Fine. How are you?
And when he wanders away from the path of righteousness, it is your duty to gently guide him back.
You have a staff of 100.
No, we only have a staff of 40.
And then make sure that we at AIPAC know everything you do.
Thanks for everything.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome.
How do you do? I'm Rabbi Chani.
Oh, Rabbi, I'm delighted to see you.
We think we nurture the political system here. We vote in the highest percentages in every election as an identifiable group. We know what we want to accomplish in terms of shaping American foreign policy, fair and square in the constitutional debate, exercising our rights as citizens. There are those, particularly opponents, and this is not a new phenomenon, it's about 2,000 years old, have always seen Jews as being different. Well, when you're in a minority, you are different. Now that there is a state of Israel, a Jewish state, Jews all over the world care about it. There is a home, a homeland, and people want to make sure that it stays that way. Now, if you go by the historical record, no one can bet their fortunes on it staying that way. It's the target of many foes.
I'd like you to have a look around. We are in a military-governed area.
If you want to understand what really motivates the so-called Jewish lobby, this is the place to begin. It is a common sight in Israel, a bus full of American Jews getting a lecture on Israeli security.
I think here it is very, very easy to understand I'm talking only strategical importance of these line of hills. Let's go out. I'm not going to take sides. I'm not going to say my opinion, what is and what yours should be. Of course, you can take your own, but please try to understand what it is all about. See the facts, make up your mind for yourselves. But here are the facts. Okay? Now, in order not to waste too much time, let's go back to the bus.
Missions, they call them, all part of a coordinated campaign to woo American Jewish support.
Only a small percentage of American Jews have ever been to Israel.
Glad to be here.
This group enters an army bunker on the Golan Heights near the Syrian border. Once again, the issue is security. That is the selling point. The defense of Israel needs you, needs your dollars. It is a compelling argument in a carefully orchestrated show.
All right, get in here.
Starring on this day,
They can take our picture.
the second most powerful man in Israel, the defense minister, General Ariel Sharon. In the audience, American and Canadian Jews who each bought $25,000 in low-interest Israeli bonds.
Put this thing down. Put the thing down. Could you take my... Put it down. Put the flash down.
Calm down.
All right.
Please, don't get violent.
The bonds bring in more than $300 million a year. Sharon knows the value of American support, and it is more than just money.
The heart of the Jewish people is here, in this country. That is the heart of Jewish people. Jerusalem, that is the heart of Jewish people. The body is spread all over the world. The heart cannot exist without the body, and I tell you, the body will not exist without this heart, Israel and Jerusalem.
My heart is my witness. I have taken an oath to remember it all.
But we are survivors. We are redeemed. We rend bitterness from our hearts. We celebrate our deliverance.
Yad Vashem, the Jerusalem memorial to World War II victims of the Holocaust. It is the emotional heart of every American Jewish mission. Bound together by religion and persecution, most American Jews feel an attachment to the Jewish state, an attachment Israel counts on. And no one in the world believes that more strongly than Menachem Begin, who spoke with us in March in his Jerusalem office.
The American Jewish community helps this country. In my opinion, it is their right to do so. In my opinion, I will go further. As I said, it is their duty. Why? Because this country is the ancient homeland of the Jewish people. Here, the forefathers of every Jew, including every Jew in the United States, lived. Here our prophets made the prophecies about eternal peace. Here our kings ruled. Every one of us is a grandchild of those prophets and those kings.
That is the connection. The foundation on which American Jewish charities have built their support for Israel. Support that, aside from the bonds, brought in an additional $500 million last year from groups like this United Jewish Appeal Mission. The mission was organized by a dentist from Teaneck, New Jersey, Andy Sklover.
The connection gives to me a dimension in life which I can't pay for. How important is it to Israel? Israel stands alone in the world with one friend right now, the United States. One friend which sometimes doesn't have identical interests, but it has one people, one Jewish people throughout the world that it can always count on. And when someone raises to me a dual loyalty question, I have no problem. It doesn't either worry me or upset me, because I have absolute loyalty to the United States. Now comes Israel. Israel is the dream of the generations of Jews. It's the love of my life.
It sounds like a sing-along at the county fair. But this, too, is Israel, and it is the most basic part of the American-Israeli connection. American Jews, whose money will build a community center in this town called Dora, celebrate a spirit that will guarantee their support for Israel over a lifetime. A spirit that is the strength of the American Jewish lobby.
How much influence do you think the American Jewish lobby has in Washington?
I don't know whether there is such an institution as a Jewish lobby. I heard about a Greek lobby which brought about the decision by the Senate not to give arms to Turkey after Turkey invaded Cyprus. I also heard something about an Italian lobby. I also heard something about an Irish lobby. I never heard about the influence of a Jewish lobby. What did they do? What could they have done? For instance, the administration of the United States decided to sell AVEX planes to the Saudi Arabian kingdom. And the Jewish lobby couldn't change it. So what kind of Jewish lobby is it?
It's a lobby that can get influential American congressmen to see Israel the way Israel would like to be seen.
Nice to see you. Glenn English from Oklahoma. How are you?
First, in a briefing from Foreign Minister Itzhak Shamir.
Do you always have this sort of tension from the press?
We thought we had a hard job.
The congressmen, one on the Foreign Relations Committee and one on the Appropriations Committee, are not here at taxpayer expense. Their trip was organized and paid for through the American Jewish Anti-Defamation League. What you are seeing, quite simply, is the American Jewish lobby at work, on location.
This is my 6th visit to your country.
5-term Texas Congressman Charlie Wilson.
That we've arrived at a time of, as he put it, a bit of scratchiness. There are problems.
One of the problems is that Congressman Wilson, a longtime supporter of Israel, voted for the AWAC sale, a defeat for the Jewish lobby.
The power of the lobby in Washington is exaggerated. The influence of the Jews at home is not exaggerated.
Influence in terms of their financial support? And
well, their financial support, and in the cities where there is a significant Jewish community, they're vitally interested in politics, not just Israel, but other areas of politics. And my friends tell me that, you know, without the Jewish ladies in the cities, they never could keep their campaign headquarters open because they're just vigorous and active and take sides and fight, you know, fight to win.
What was the personal reaction to you after that AWACS vote?
Well, let's see. I was having you mean among my Jewish friends?
Yes. Did it cost you support?
Yeah, it sure did. It cost me 4 or 5 sponsors for a fundraiser that I was having. I had to take their names off, and that I was having in Houston.
Important fundraisers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that where the power is, with the financial contributions?
Well, yes. But we can't say that without saying that's everybody's bottom line. Where would the oil lobby be? Where would the medical lobby be? Where would the automobile lobby be? Where would the milk lobby be? Where would anybody's lobby be without financial contributions?
Wilson, in spite of his vote on AWACS, went to Jerusalem last December, eager to prove he is still pro-Israel.
We assured the foreign minister that at least it was our judgment that anything that Israel needed to compensate or to combat the added military capabilities that Saudi Arabia had from the AWACS would be forthcoming.
Wilson and his freshman colleagues spent 5 days in Israel, following the standard itinerary arranged for American VIPs, which always means a stop at Yad Vashem.
It was absolutely amazing that our government would know for that long and do absolutely nothing to... They could have bombed the rail yards, they could have bombed the approaches, they could have bombed the death chambers.
You've been to Israel, you said, 6, 7 times.
Yeah.
In a general way, how good are they at putting out their case, at selling their position?
Great. And you would be too, because they are motivated. If they don't sell their position to the United States, they're finished, and they know it.
Now, what you see down there is the Jordan Valley, which is a settlement area as well, and the mountains on the other side is Jordan.
From Yad Vashem, the congressmen were driven to one of the controversial settlements on the west bank of the Jordan River. This time, the message was delivered by a young Israeli mother.
Why do you insist on being here if they don't want you?
Why we insist? First of all, if we go further 1,000 years ago, I believe that this was the Israel of the Bible. Israeli people belong to a certain place, like the Americans belong to the United States. They came over there as a pilgrimage, and they settled there, and they stayed there. Israel, according to the Bible, at least, supposed to be here, exactly here.
The agreement to bring Wilson and the other congressmen to Israel included continuing the trip to Egypt and Saudi Arabia for some Arab persuasion, still paid for, believe it or not, by the Jewish Anti-Defamation League. The lobby can no longer expect American congressmen to listen only to the Israeli point of view. Here, Egyptian President Mubarak gets equal time. Selling Israel's message isn't as easy as it used to be. That has forced the Israelis to keep looking for new friends.
Let us go to the house of the Lord.
And you don't have to be Jewish to love Israel. This is a group from a fundamentalist Christian church in Southern California, founded by Reverend Chuck Smith, whose 25,000 members are a very effective lobbying force.
If an issue came up where you did feel Israel's national security was compromised, would you be in touch with your congressman, with your senator about it?
I definitely will be in touch with, hopefully, the president. Life that was lived once after the flesh is over, crucified with Christ, now buried with Christ in the water of baptism.
Smith's group has come to dedicate a baptismal site they've built along the River Jordan and to baptize a few believers. They are part of a fast-growing movement numbering millions of American Christians who have become ardent boosters of the Israeli cause, believing that the state of Israel was prophesied in the Bible and will pave the way for the return of Christ.
10,000 years, like shining.
And Smith's group does more than just sing Israel's praises. Last year, they hand-delivered $250,000 to Menachem Begin, designated for Israel's defense forces.
He is able to deliver evermore.
I would like you to know, my friend, I get letters, cables from Christians who were born Christians, whose grandfathers came in the ship called Mayflower. We stand by you, we support you. We have millions of Christians who support Israel and Israel's policy and Israel's decisions. Ask them, you will know.
But no one asked Bailey Smith, president of the 14 million-member Southern Baptist Convention, before he made this remark.
Friend, God Almighty does not hear the prayer of a Jew, for how in the world can God hear the prayer of a man who says Jesus Christ is not the true Messiah?
That offended many American Jews.
This is Dr. Bailey Smith, president of the Southern Baptist
Pleasure to be here.
Nevertheless, 15 months later, Bailey Smith is welcomed in Israel by the powerful Minister of Interior, Yosef Berg. Smiths come with a group of Baptist and Jewish clergy on a mission arranged but not paid for by the same Anti-Defamation League that brought over the congressman.
We love your country, and of course, as Baptists, we believe that Israel is very important, very vital. And one of the messages we want to take back to America is that we need to always show our deep love and support and appreciation for Israel. And we want you to know that.
We love to be loved.
CBS Reports will continue.
Hold my duck.
Where are you going?
I've got spring cleaning to do.
It's not spring.
Lysol deodorizing cleaner is like spring cleaning in a bottle, anytime. Lysol cleaner kills germs in the bathroom. It fights mold and mildew down here and cleans greasy dirt in the kitchen.
And it smells like spring, fresh and clean. That was easy.
Duck soup.
Lysol deodorizing cleaner. It's spring cleaning in a bottle every time.
You've got a choice with Love My Carpet, because only Love My Carpet gives you a choice of 4 wonderful scents, including new soft scent. New soft scent, you'll love it. Love My Carpet gets dog, cat, and smoke odors out of the rug. Just sprinkle it on and your whole room smells fresh, clean. And all 4 Love My Carpet scents keep me smelling fresh. That's why you'll love My Carpet. Pick 'em up. I do.
On CBS Sports Saturday, Sebastian Coe is out to break the record for the 800 meters, fast-paced super bantamweight action, and the conclusion of the International Bicycle Classic, Saturday.
Tomorrow, what's bugging Eastern Ohio? The answer can be found covering every leaf, dog, and person when Charles Carroll reports on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather tomorrow.
This is CBS.
Times have changed. You can't march up on the hill anymore and say, we need it.
Joe Biden, United States Senator from Delaware for the past 10 years. Irish Catholic, 39 years old, addressing his first AIPAC convention.
You can't march up on the hill anymore and imply, you know, you need us. The so-called juggernaut of the so-called Jewish lobby is something less than it was in the past, not because the people are less, but because the world has changed.
Senator, what did the so-called Jewish lobby have going for it 10 years ago that it doesn't have today?
The way it was that the leadership in the Jewish community and the leadership in the federal government in both political parties were direct products of World War II and had a visceral reaction to the experience of the Holocaust. That leadership has passed from the scene by and large. The great men are gone. The Hubert Humphreys, the Jack Javitzes, they are no longer the ones making major impacts upon American foreign policy. That's number one. Number two, oil was not an issue. It sold for $1.50 a barrel, and we had complete access to it, and it was the impression was that American oil companies almost owned the Arab countries in a sense. And so there was nothing that had to be traded off in support. The only thing that there was no risk in supporting Israel. There was no downside to supporting Israel. Well, that has changed. But with those two massive changes, those who support Israel continue to argue for that support in terms of a moral commitment. That moral commitment meets head-on the political and economic reality of oil. And I don't believe the moral commitment will be the winner.
American Jews are facing that more and more. The lobby can send its troops up to the Hill, but they can no longer count on the majority of congressmen to be with them when it comes to opposing arms sales to the Arabs. All they can count on is what they need for themselves. Planes, tanks, weapons. The special relationship has evolved into a military partnership. And our foreign aid bill, which pays for these weapons, is Israel's last line of defense. Israel got about $2 billion in military aid from us this year, more than half of it as a long-term loan. The lobby makes sure that money keeps coming.
We lobby for the aid. In fact, the Egyptians call us to help them get their aid. And as long as, again, they are partners in a peace process, seeking rapprochement and reconciliation with Israel, I'm more than willing to help. It's in the interest of the United States.
The Egyptians know you can get it for them.
Yes. Last year in December, high officials in the State Department called me, again, this is after the AWACS vote, and said, please help us get the foreign aid bill through. Help us get the 95 Republicans we need to get to pass the bill in the House.
Because you've got the influence to do it.
Yes, sir. And we got 95 Republicans.
How influential is the lobby, the pro-Israel lobby, in making sure that aid goes through?
Damned influential. If it wasn't for Israel, we couldn't pass a foreign aid bill.
American aid money for Israel's defense must be spent in America. For General Dynamics, that has meant $1.2 billion in sales. For McDonnell Douglas, over $7 billion. So the American-Israeli connection is a bonanza for American business. When aid to Israel comes before the Congress, the defense contractors are as eager as the American Jewish lobby. This enormous defense buildup has put Israel in debt to us for $8 billion and created among Israelis an anxious dependence on the United States. That troubles Len Waldman, an American who has raised millions of dollars for Israel's universities.
The awful thing is that the military establishment has become the main source of Israel's contact with the United States.
Waldman lived in Israel for 20 years and goes back frequently. His son Yossi and his family are Israeli citizens. Together, father and son have fought in all of Israel's wars. Len in 1948 and 1956. Yossi in 67 and 73.
You know, when you were a little
Less
boy,
reserved, maybe
I used to wander around the border kibbutz with you on my shoulders and say to others of my colleagues, and we were all great idealists, well, these kids won't have to be soldiers. And now you go around with your kids on your shoulders, do you really honestly think they won't have to be soldiers?
I have to give it a chance, but I feel the chance is running away, and a great deal of it is with the relationships that we have, Israel-America, with the fact that it is based upon the defense.
As you say, though, this world, such as it is, the military dependence between the United States and Israel is the bedrock of that relationship.
Well, that's pretty lousy. And that's the kind of thing I think that we should work to change, because, you know, Israel as a state could have one kind of relationship with the United States, but me as an American, I have a different kind of relationship with my son, who's an Israeli, okay? And this applies to hundreds of thousands of Americans who are related, one way or another, to hundreds of thousands of Israelis.
What you're saying is you'd like to see the main component of the Israeli-American relationship, that is to say, defense, changed.
Exactly.
That would mean stop living off the sword.
On June 4th, Prime Minister Begin ordered this airstrike on Lebanon, after Israeli diplomats in Europe were the targets of Arab terrorist attacks. Israeli jets bombed Beirut, and the forces of the Palestine Liberation Organization shelled northern Israel. The shelling sparked an Israeli invasion. The death toll stands now in the thousands. Last summer, the Israelis bombed PLO headquarters in Beirut with American-made fighters, and 300 civilians were killed. That marked the beginning of a series of acts which has divided American Jews and left non-Jews wondering where our relationship with Israel is heading. General, there will be many Americans who will be listening to this who will say, look, we give Israel $2.2 billion worth of economic and military aid. What does that give us from this country? Do we have no influence with them? Do we have no right for consultation, for an understanding of the direction they're going in?
If somebody thinks that this support entitles him to pressure Israel, so he's wrong.
You will never submit to pressure in that regard?
Will never submit any pressure which will endanger our security and existence.
The United States and the State of Israel help each other. It is not one-way traffic. We receive assistance from the United States in the economic and the military field, for which we are very grateful. But we help the United States. We contribute to your national security.
In what ways specifically?
In a very serious way, but don't ask me to go into details. Because if we go into details, then we will not be able to continue to contribute to national security of the United States. But please believe me that this is a fact. The President knows about the fact. The Secretary of State knows about the fact. I even suppose that the Secretary of Defense knows about that fact.
It is an incredibly valuable piece of real estate in an area of the world that we need stability and security. Israel is a friend. Israel is a valued ally. Israel is important to the United States of America in naked Machiavellian terms.
We are not on the receiving line. We do not queue up and stretch out our hand, please help us.
America may have liked Israel better when it was on the receiving line. An Israel we were more comfortable with. The founding father, Ben-Gurion. The charismatic general, Diane. The Jewish grandmother we called Golda. Then along came Menachem Begin, the man who many believe altered the way Americans think about Israel. To examine what is happening to the American-Israeli connection, you have also to examine Menachem Begin, an Israeli whose image was not only different from all the others, but whose appeal now is to a different Israel. Begin, Begin, King of Israel, they chant. Although he is a European or Ashkenazi Jew, Begin has managed to capture the passionate support of the Sephardim, Jews who have emigrated to Israel from Arab countries. This is his power base. Deeply religious Sephardic Jews are the poorest of Israelis. But they are now a majority of the population, and they believe devoutly in Begin's tough line with the Arabs, and even with the United States. In a Sephardic development town, we spoke to the mayor, who is a member of the Knesset in Begin's Likud party.
Did they all vote in the last election?
אתם הצבעתם בבחירות האחרונות? כן. Yes.
Who did you vote for?
בשביל מי הצבעתם? הליכוד. ליכוד. For the Likud party.
Where is her family from, originally?
Tunisia, and his mother from Tripoli.
Begin knows Israel is changing. Sephardic Jews could control her future. Mayor Shetrit proved that to us at a local school.
How many in her family?
כמה אחים ואחיות יש לך במשפחה שלך? 7.
7 in her family.
7 in her family.
And how about her?
ולך? 12.
12 in her family. 12 brothers and sisters.
12 brothers and sisters.
And what about her?
ולך? 8 children.
So these are the new Israelis Americans must learn to understand. Having come from Arab countries where they suffered persecution, the Sephardim do not want an Israel relying on American assurances for their security.
They felt in the past the very hard hand of the Arabs, and therefore they want much more better guarantees to the security of Israel. All of them were educated in religious communities, according to the Bible. There is no doubt about our rights on the big Israel.
The Big Israel means expanding Israel's borders to include all the territories captured in the Arab-Israeli wars. With that kind of support, Begin could afford to stun our State Department last December by announcing the formal annexation of the Golan Heights, a territory captured from Syria in 1967 and occupied by Israel ever since. American Jews and Israelis were left divided once again over Begin's actions.
I think it's wrong for Israel, where its vital interests are not at jeopardy, as the Golan situation was not in jeopardy, to put the United States in an embarrassing position, to put the United States in an uncompromising position, well, it wasn't necessary.
I think the time came in this country that, in fact, there was a need to do it. Maybe not at this minute, but I don't buy at all the fact that if it were done 2 months from now, there would have been anything different.
Why not have the publicity first and gain the favor of the world so everybody understands your position?
Because Begin has said that we didn't want to embarrass you, the United States, with our decision.
For some reason, you found it necessary to give the United States a slap in the face. Why? Nobody seems to know.
So we are alone as it is, we are alone.
No, you're not alone. You're more alone when you act that way.
All we have is the Jewish empire, the Jews the world over.
And some of the Jews the world over don't like what happened.
But you can't just go criticizing without looking at the depth of the matter.
It seems to me that there was supposed to be an understanding between Begin and the American Jewish community to consult before. And that didn't happen with this.
Jewish community,
but that didn't happen on this issue.
How do you know?
Yes, indeed. We did not ask any questions in the United States. We are not supposed to. We are a sovereign country, my friend. And if there was some disappointment or even anger in Washington, I am sorry for it. There was no reason for it. No reason, in my opinion.
Tell me more about the personality of Menachem Begin as it is seen by your colleagues up here. What's the impression they have of this man?
Well, this is very tough for me because when I say this, then it's going to come across as me being, you know, anti-Israel somewhere or another. The truth of the matter is that he's perceived as being intransigent, stubborn, unyielding, a bit trigger happy, and a bit prone to fly off the handle.
Begin's image in America has been one of Israel's biggest problems. The American press has given him a pretty rough ride in a time when the media is often accused of being dominated by Jews with a pro-Israeli bias. If that is true, Begin has rarely benefited from it.
I've searched the public record in the last year and seen for the most part in American papers and magazines that you are portrayed as intransigent, defiant, demagogic, ill-tempered, paranoid, sometimes insulting. Does that trouble you to think that the American people
not at all,
should have such an image of Israel's prime minister?
No, not at all. You know, you use some words which are derogatory, insulting. I treat such expressions with the contempt they deserve. No more. But I will dwell only on one intransigent. Look at this map, please. Look at this map. Here's the Sinai Peninsula. For the sake of peace with Egypt, we gave up the whole Sinai Peninsula, 23,000 square miles. We gave up the oil wells here in the Gulf, 24% of our annual oil consumption. And yet we continue fulfilling our commitments. Is this intransigence? Let be ashamed the people who use even such a word.
You have to think about where Begin's coming from. And I think that anybody that underestimates his fear for the destruction of the Jewish state makes a serious mistake. And I also believe that him coming from Poland, going through what he went through, losing all of his family, I really believe that in Begin's heart of hearts, that he really believes in the last analysis that Israel's going to be left alone. The Jews will be alone once again.
Cats have something new to chow, chow, chow about. Purina Cat Chow brand cat food now tastes better than ever.
He's always eaten cat chow, but just look at the way he goes for it now. He really loves it. And I know that there's nothing more healthful for my cat.
That's right. Better than ever taste and great nutrition that's raised generations of healthy cats. You can depend on Purina Cat Chow.
You can depend on Purina Cat Chow. Purina Cat Chow, 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 chow.
Yeah. Sounds like a hit, Laura. Thanks. How about some coffee?
Great. Whoa.
Only half a cup? I thought you loved fresh brewed coffee.
Love the rich taste. It's the caffeine I can do without.
Me too. That's why we're drinking Brem decaffeinated coffee.
This is Brim.
This is Brem ground, and it's decaffeinated so you don't have to stop at half a cup.
If it tastes this rich, I don't want to stop. Fill it to the rim.
With Brem.
Fill your cup to the rim with the richness of Brim.
Kids never give up.
Kids are kids. Kids are kids, it's true.
Slept.
Kids will do things only kids will do.
Almost.
And moms are moms. They know what's fun for kids.
Maybe Mom will make us some Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid unsweetened and my sugar gives them fruity flavors and vitamin C. Besides, soda's about 3 times the price.
That hit the spot.
Moms know Kool-Aid is the one for kids.
Kool-Aid brand soft drink mix.
Really crispy. That's new Doritos brand Crispy Lights tortilla chips. And that light, crispy texture is why they go so well with hamburgers.
Crispy Lights are just the ticket. With a nice hot bowl of soup.
With wedding cake? Probably not.
But that light, crispy texture really makes a sandwich sit up and take notice. Crispy Lights go anywhere potato chips go.
New Doritos Crispy Lights from Frito-Lay. Food tastes better everywhere they go.
In the minds of many people here in the United States, approximately 2 years ago, Israel began to be viewed as a country governed by people who weren't always rational, perhaps for good reason.
Len Waldman does not speak for the American Jewish community. No one person or group does. But we asked him back in his New York office about America's changing perception of Israel.
I think our image has changed radically in the past couple of years as we get closer to peace. And Israel's deep concerns and traumatic divisions begin to come out before the public.
Traumatic divisions. The West Bank of the Jordan River, where Arabs and Israelis have been killed recently in waves of street violence. 750,000 Palestinians live under Israeli occupation here, where the PLO hopes to establish a Palestinian state. Many believe one reason Israel invaded Lebanon was to eliminate that hope by destroying the PLO. But after the dust settles in Lebanon, this contentious piece of real estate, this Judea and Samaria, as the Israelis call it, will be the pressure point in the American-Israeli connection.
A nation cannot live on a strip of land 6 to 17 miles wide and 60 miles long. That's impossible.
Israelis regard this land and their right to settle on it as crucial to their security, and they take every opportunity to persuade the American Jewish community of that. Here, Defense Minister Sharon takes a turn.
Settlements were always part of our security concept.
Under the personal direction of General Sharon, the Begin government has built 55 new settlements, despite some sharp American protests that they are obstacles to peace, and that in effect Israel is annexing the West Bank. In the next 4 years, the Israelis plan to move in 70,000 settlers. In 30 years, 1 million. Few Americans realize just how permanent the settlements are. At Mala Shimon, these American Jews on a mission from Boston were surprised to learn from one militant settler that they're here to stay.
We were at the end of the pioneering stage before it came to a massive stage that it is now.
If the government decides to make a peace treaty with somebody and says, move out, you have to move out.
Well, you're asking a question where there's no answer, really.
Well, it's not your
They own the land. That's not the point.
Will you abide by the law?
I think that all the Israelis sitting here in Yehuda and Shomron, in all the villages which have been built, and there are many people who are backing us now, which did not exist a few years ago, but now there are many people who are backing the settlers here. I think that such a question is more and more hypothetical.
Look, the problem is not an American problem, it's an Israeli problem. And, you know, discussing with Secretary Haig one day, he said that, you know, Israel is losing credibility around the world by adding settlements, by construction in this area.
What did you say to him?
So I said that door credibility is very important. But if I have to choose between credibility and security, without any hesitation whatsoever, I will choose security.
What kind of pistol is that?
This is a Colt 45, which for years was the...
Mort Delinsky is an American Orthodox Jew from New York who immigrated here 20 years ago. He lives now in the West Bank settlement of Tekoa. It is not uncommon for settlers to carry weapons, and several Arabs have been killed by settlers in recent months.
You carry that with you all the time when you're out at Tekoa?
On the way to and on the way back and forth, we go through a few areas where there have been problems.
You're here to stay?
You know, that's a sort of funny question to ask a person who's lived here for 20 years.
I mean, you're here to stay in this particular area, in this settlement in Tekoa.
Look, I'm here to stay. The settlements are here to stay. The people who are here to stay. And the people who are coming are here to stay. When that one simple fact gets across to everybody, then there's going to be little problem. Look, a dream is reaching fulfillment now. This dream of getting here exactly where I am existed even in New York.
There's another version to understanding these settlements, and that is, from the Palestinian point of view, that what you're seeing here is an Israeli attempt to simply annex the West Bank.
I don't see how anyone can deny our historical right to return to where this people emanated from. And this is the spot. People want the support of the United States. They want it desperately. But if the question of that support is balanced out against our right to live where we want to live. After all, what is the Zionist dream all about? It's that for the first time in 2,000 years, Jews will determine their own destiny.
What is important here is how we see it. Because those that have to live here, it's ourselves, not the Americans.
And your view is that this Judea and Samaria will never be part of a Palestinian state. And that is the end of the discussion.
Judea, Samaria, and Gaza district will never be another Palestinian state or part of a Palestinian state.
No Palestinian state means permanent Israeli control, and Arab resistance is dealt with harshly. This home was dynamited by the Israeli army after the owner's 14-year-old son was accused of throwing a Molotov cocktail at an Israeli patrol.
And you came here and this is what you saw?
Yes.
All destroyed.
It was not an isolated incident. A cycle of violence has gripped the West Bank. Arabs and Israelis have been killed during riots in which Israeli security forces have fired on Arab demonstrators.
For most of the 30-odd years of this so-called special relationship, Israel, I think, was seen in America as an underdog. And I think now, in the United States, Israel is seen by many people as an occupying power. They talk about the riots and demonstrations and strikes in Judea and Samaria, as you call it, on the West Bank. Arab houses being demolished, curfews. Yet you keep reminding...
Do you ask questions or you make statements?
No, the question is, you remind Americans of the democracy that Israel is, and yet I think people are reading conflicting statements to that.
I don't want Israel to be an underdog. I want Israel to be a free democracy, a proud country. And we don't oppress anybody. I saw yesterday the rocks which were prepared by the so-called Shabab to throw at our soldiers. Every stone could have killed a man on the spot. And then our army, of course, has to do its duty. Nobody wants to kill anybody. I deeply regret it. Don't make of us an underdog. No more picturing the Jews, the poor guy, the persecuted guy, who may be pitied. Even the pity didn't help us in the 40s, as you know. 6 million Jews got killed. Nobody pitied them. Nobody came to their rescue. Enough of it, enough of it. We want to be human beings like the Americans, like the British, like the Frenchmen, and normal people with the right to the country, independent, free, democratic, believing in the common values we have with the American people.
How are the American Jews responding to those tough policies of Begin and Sharon that have produced that violence on the West Bank?
With sadness, with a certain amount of resistance, and with messages to the Begin administration that your main objective, you always say, is to talk. And you're not going to be able to talk with rifles and with clubs. And more Americans are expressing this, even amongst those who say we're in favor of the settlements.
Is the violence that we're seeing now on the West Bank and the bombing in Lebanon, is it tarnishing Israel's image here? Are you having a tougher time selling your message?
People ask me questions about it, and they're legitimate questions. And people also understand that the Israelis are at war. You don't expect them to walk around with their hands in their pockets. People are concerned anytime lives are lost or there are disputes. And yet, on votes, which you can quantify, Israel is voted in a favorable way, a significant portion of foreign aid monies. The senators and the congressmen are strong supporters of Israel.
Whether Israel can maintain that support while it continues to pursue its current policies on the West Bank and in Lebanon will be the acid test for Tom Dine and the pro-Israel lobby. In the meantime, the next encounter in Washington may be over the proposed sale of advanced weapons and aircraft to Jordan.
I think the IHawks in Jordan would be a serious threat to Israel because they're right there.
Dine is already in the trenches, mounting an all-out effort to block the sale.
Strong indications that this committee would probably move to cut off the $95 million of aid to Jordan.
Coupled with Israel's invasion of Lebanon, it could develop into a fierce and divisive debate, followed by yet another reconciliation. That has been the pattern of this relationship over the years, except now there are some basic differences that even the so-called Jewish lobby is powerless to affect. Differences in American priorities and differences in Israeli attitudes. As one Israeli put it, Menachem Begin is not an aberration. Begin is Israel. Whoever succeeds him is likely to continue his hardline policies. Americans will need to confront that, just as Israelis are confronting our changing relationships with the Arab world. Unless we and the Israelis are realistic with each other about where our interests are the same and where they are not, the American-Israeli connection could be torn apart. For CBS Reports, I'm Andrew Lack.
See, I'll work on the average of an 11-hour day. And when I'm beginning to get hungry, I'm not thinking about my work. I'm thinking about my next meal.
It's so satisfying.
Snickers is packed with peanuts. I'll have one at 2 or 3 in the afternoon when I'm hungry, and come dinner time, I'm fine.
Peanuts in peanut butter nougat, caramel, and milk chocolate.
Satisfying.
Packed with peanuts, Snickers really satisfies.
I'm not hungry. I know I'm going to be okay till dinner time.
Sunny days, active days, healthy looking skin. Vaseline intensive care saves your summertime skin.
There's nothing like healthy looking summer skin.
And Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion helps you keep it.
Helps eliminate dryness, flaking, peeling, so your tan lasts longer and looks better.
Yeah, Vaseline Intensive Care saves your summertime skin.
There's one product no medicine cabinet should be without. Alka-Seltzer. For headache with acid indigestion, nothing is more soothing or effective. It's America's home remedy.
I'm feeling much better.
Butch. Here, Butch. What's going on there? It's Butch, Ed. You feed him nothing but bargain brand. So? He deserves mainstay dog food. But bargain brands are cheap. Mainstay is low in price, but you get more than you bargain for.
Most bargain brands don't add all of Mainstay's supplemental vitamins and nutrients. And Mainstay has 100% of everything adult dogs need.
Butch, but Mainstay. Yep, with Mainstay you get more than you bargained for.
Tonight on the CBS Late Movie, a discredited fad diet author forces Quincy to eat his words. Then pranks and freak accidents put the skids on festivities at a sports car rally. That's Quincy, followed by McMillan and Wife on the CBS Late Movie.
In covering your world, there's one difference that counts: experience. And the CBS News team is America's first choice for the worldwide first-person experience that brings you closer to the stories that concern you. Count on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather, where experience makes all the difference in the world.
This is CBS.
for helping us out. Where the heck is your coat?
In the back seat.
What are you doing running around without it?
I just wanted to get the snow off the car before I pulled out.
What are the roads like out there?
Well, when I got here, it wasn't that bad. It looks like it's going to be bad the rest of the way home.
And what are you doing tonight? Why are you out in the first place?
Just getting home from work.
And the stop on the way?
The stop on the way to just get a few extra things before being in the house for a few days.
Any panic in your house about the storm?
I hope not.
What's your name?
Larry.
Larry what?
McDade.
Mr. McDade, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good luck riding this out.
Have a good
car out there. Can I sit this? Hang on just a second. First of all, thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
How are the roads out there?
Horrible, absolutely horrible. I mean, I'm driving an SUV and I'm just slipping and sliding all over the place.
So what are you doing out in it?
I need to get gas. I had to go to the grocery store and get some food. So I had no other choice but to.
And then what happens to you the rest of the weekend?
Rest of the weekend, I'm staying in, letting some of the guys come out here and clear the room, put some salt down here.
Smart idea. What's your name?
My name is Ann.
And with or without an E?
Without the E.
And what's your last name?
Wallace.
W-A-L-L-A-C-E?
Yes, sir.
Very nice to meet you. I'm not sure. trying to rush